3.9% is the number that turns retirement wealth into retirement life. At $500,000, that is $19,500 a year. At $5 million, it is $195,000. That tenfold difference sounds as if it should create two completely different human beings. It usually does not. Somewhere between $1.5 million and $2.5 million, the texture of your average day starts to plateau. More wealth still buys protection, generosity, and options, but it stops buying a radically different Tuesday morning. The dangerous part is that your brain rarely notices when you cross that line, so you keep moving it. I am using investable assets here, not the estimated value of your home, your car, or the business you might sell one day. Your house can reduce your expenses, but it cannot buy groceries unless you rent it, borrow against it, or sell it. I am also treating every spending figure as gross income before tax. $1 million inside a traditional 401k is not economically identical to $1 million in a Roth account, and neither behaves like $1 million in a taxable brokerage account. Retirement calculators tend to blur those differences because reality makes the software look untidy. For the math, Morningstar's 2025 retirement income research estimated a 3.9% starting withdrawal rate for a diversified portfolio, funding 30 years of inflation-adjusted spending with a 90% probability of money remaining. Stretch the retirement to 35 years, and the base rate falls to roughly 3.5%. Those are planning assumptions, not commandments. They give us a consistent ruler for comparing the levels without pretending the market owes you an orderly sequence of returns. The psychology matters because retirees do not naturally switch from accumulation mode to spending mode. The Employee Benefit Research Institute surveyed approximately 3,600 American retirees between ages 62 and 75 in 2024. 38% described themselves as having a savings mindset. Only 11% identified with a spending mindset. More than a third had faced unexpected expenses, yet the majority still did not keep even 3 months of emergency savings. That combination is fascinating. People protect the investment balance emotionally while leaving their actual lives exposed financially. The same survey found that 58% of respondents who retired earlier than expected had not chosen their original timing. Health problems and disability were the largest reason, followed by company changes such as downsizing, closure, or reorganization. The retirement industry tells you to select an age, enter an annual return, and watch the calculator produce a soothing green line. The real world may select the age for you, and the real world has never seen your spreadsheet. That brings us to the first level, between $500,000 and $750,000. This is fragile freedom. At $500,000, a 30-year plan begins with $19,500 from the portfolio. If you retire early enough to require 35 years, the opening amount falls to $17,500. That is about $1,458 per month before tax under the longer plan. Your investment statement says $500,000. Your lifestyle, here's a modest monthly paycheck with no employer health insurance attached. This level can work when several pieces already fit. Your housing cost is low, your debts are controlled. You eventually receive meaningful Social Security. You are willing to adjust discretionary spending after bad market years. You may have part-time income, a pension, rental income, or a spouse who is still working. Remove those supports, and $500,000 stops looking like retirement wealth and starts looking like a long emergency fund. Your daily life here is not necessarily miserable. You can have time, autonomy, hobbies, friends, long walks, home-cooked meals, and inexpensive travel. A person with low fixed costs can live better on this amount than someone with 5 times the assets and an expensive lifestyle they are terrified to reduce. Wealth funds consumption, but fixed obligations decide how much freedom each dollar creates. The pressure appears when life refuses to arrive in average-sized installments. A roof replacement, dental work, a family emergency, a new vehicle, or several weak market years can consume a large percentage of your annual portfolio income. A $15,000 surprise equals most of a year's planned withdrawal. You do not experience that as an accounting adjustment. You experience it as a threat to every future version of yourself. That anxiety is not irrational. At this tier, the margin for error really is narrow. The brain problem comes when reasonable caution turns into complete spending paralysis. You begin treating the portfolio balance as the product rather than the life it was built to support. You cancel activities that fit the plan because the emotional pain of seeing 500,000 become 497,000 feels larger than the pleasure those activities provide. A market decline is especially cruel at this level because percentages disguise the human impact. A 20% fall turns $500,000 into $400,000. Continue withdrawing $19,500. And the withdrawal is no longer 3.9% of the remaining balance. It is approaching 5%. The market can recover while your portfolio fails to recover with it because you sold assets during the decline to pay for life. That is sequence of returns risk, and it turns bad timing into permanent damage. The useful move at this tier is not pretending that every expense is equally flexible. Housing, basic food, insurance, utilities, and medicine belong to your floor. Travel, gifts, restaurants, and upgrades belong to a separate layer. When markets fall, you adjust the second layer without destabilizing the first. A retirement plan that cannot distinguish a power bill from a cruise is not a plan. It is a percentage wearing a tie. Between $750,000 and $1 million, the emotional state changes from fragile freedom to vigilant stability. At $750,000, the 30-year opening withdrawal is $29,250. Under the longer 35-year horizon, it is $26,250. That amount alone may not fund the retirement you pictured, but it begins to cover a credible share of normal living expenses. Add a hypothetical $40,000 of combined annual Social Security later, and the household cash flow could reach roughly $66,000 to $69,000 before tax. That Social Security assumption is only an illustration. Your result depends on your earnings records, ages, and claiming decisions. For people whose full retirement age is 67, claiming at 62 can reduce the monthly benefit by as much as 30%. Delaying after full retirement age can add delayed retirement credits until age 70. At lower wealth levels, that permanent income difference has more influence than squeezing another fraction of a percent from your investments. Your life becomes more stable here because the portfolio can absorb ordinary surprises without every expense becoming an existential debate. You can replace the water heater without recalculating your life expectancy. You can travel occasionally, help an adult child within limits, and maintain a sensible cash reserve. You still compare prices because the plan benefits from it, but you are no longer forced to optimize every sandwich. The strange psychological shift is that many people at this level still live as if they have $500,000. The portfolio crossed into viability, but the owner's nervous system did not receive the memo. Years of saving trained you to interpret spending as failure. This is where balance worship begins. $750,000 feels safe, while $740,000 feels damaged, even if the reduction paid for something the money was deliberately accumulated to provide. You start checking the account after every purchase as though the market maintains an itemized list of your moral decisions. If you like retirement math without the motivational fog, subscribe. I read the boring documents so you can keep your weekend. The next level, between $1 million and $1.5 million, is the Millionaire Mirage. At $1 million, the 30-year starting withdrawal is $39,000. For an early retirement modeled over 35 years, it is $35,000. Add the same illustrative $40,000 of eventual Social Security, and you have roughly $75,000 to $79,000 of gross household income. That is real retirement capacity. It can support a comfortable life in many parts of the country, especially with a paid-off home. It will feel constrained in expensive cities, with large housing payments, private health coverage before Medicare, dependent relatives, or unusually ambitious travel. The number matters, but geography and obligations decide what the number means. $1 million has enormous psychological power because humans love round thresholds. The seventh digit appears, and you expect a ceremony. You imagine confidence arriving with it. Then the market falls 6% and removes $60,000 from the screen. Technically, you remain wealthy. Emotionally, you feel as if your millionaire status was repossessed. This creates a peculiar form of loss aversion. You are comfortable taking investment risk while approaching 1 million because every gain felt like progress. Once you cross it, the same volatility feels like demotion. You become more protective at the exact moment the portfolio was meant to begin serving you. A common reaction is to create a new target. 1 million was enough until you had it. Now 1.2 million feels responsible. You reach that, and 1.5 million looks cleaner. Your expenses did not change. Your desired retirement did not change. The goalpost moved because achieving the old goal removed the anticipation that had been motivating you. Research on income and emotional well-being helps explain this. The strongest recent work does not support one universal income point where happiness stops rising for everyone. It finds a relationship closer to the logarithm of income for much of the population. In plain English, relative increases matter more than equal dollar increases. Moving from $50,000 of income to $100,000 can transform your options. Moving from $200,000 to $250,000 is a much smaller change, even though the extra dollars are identical. Retirement wealth behaves similarly. Going from $500,000 to $1 million doubles the portfolio income and dramatically improves resilience. Going from $4 million to $4.5 million adds the same $500,000, but it rarely changes where you eat breakfast, whom you spend time with, or whether you enjoy Wednesday afternoon. The Millionaire Mirage is believing the label itself will create emotional safety. It cannot. Safety comes from knowing which expenses are covered, how withdrawals change after weak markets, where taxes will come from, and what you will do with your time. A round balance answers none of those questions. Now we arrive at the range between $1.5 million and $2.5 million. For many households, this is the enough zone, and it is where everyday life begins to plateau. At $1.5 million, the 30-year opening withdrawal is $58,500. At $2 million, it is $78,000. At $2.5 million, it is $97,500. Under the longer 35-year assumption, those amounts begin at $52,500, $70,000, and $87,500. Add the hypothetical $40,000 of Social Security, and a $2 million household could eventually have around $118,000 of gross annual cash flow. The portfolio alone can cover a broad middle-class spending plan. Guaranteed income can then fund travel, taxes, gifts, or a larger safety margin rather than rescuing the basic budget. For context, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported average annual expenditures of $78,535 across all American consumer units in 2024. That is not a retirement target, and it includes households at every adult life stage. It does show why $2 million becomes such an important threshold. At a 3.9% starting rate, the portfolio alone produces roughly the spending of the average American household before adding Social Security or a pension. Your actual life at this level becomes comfortably unremarkable. A car repair is irritating rather than destabilizing. You can take international trips, choose better flight times, eat out without auditing the menu, and replace aging appliances before they become archaeological artifacts. You can help family, support a cause, and buy back time by outsourcing work you dislike. What you probably do not do is live like a celebrity. $1.5 million is not a private aircraft portfolio. $2 million does not make luxury housing in every coastal city painless. You can still overspend it, especially in early retirement. The difference is that ordinary life no longer requires financial heroics. A 20% market decline takes $2 million to $1.6 million. That is a frightening statement balance, but it still leaves substantial productive capital. If you temporarily freeze inflation increases, postpone a major purchase, or trim discretionary withdrawals, the plan has room to heal. At $500,000, flexibility protects survival. Here, flexibility protects comfort. This is the point where your brain often confuses a lower probability of failure with zero probability of failure. No amount guarantees perfect health, stable markets, low inflation, or family harmony. Yet the absence of certainty does not mean the plan is inadequate. It means you are a human being living in a universe that refuses to issue warranties. The shift you should feel here is confidence, but confidence is not the belief that nothing bad can happen. It is the knowledge that several bad things can happen without forcing you to abandon the life you built. This is also where working another year becomes expensive in a different currency. Suppose your portfolio is already $2 million, your spending is covered, and you remain employed because $2.3 million feels safer. You are no longer exchanging time for financial survival. You are purchasing a smaller reduction in uncertainty with one of your remaining healthy years. That trade may be worthwhile if you enjoy the work, want to finish something meaningful, or need the social structure. It becomes questionable when you hate Monday, think about retirement every day, and cannot explain what the extra $300,000 will add to your routine. Subscribe if you want more analysis like this, because the largest retirement mistakes tend to hide behind respectable-looking numbers. The next range, between $2.5 million and $5 million, is where wealth buys optionality rather than a fundamentally different daily life. At $3 million, the 30-year portfolio income begins around $117,000. At $4 million, it is $156,000. At $5 million, it reaches $195,000. Even the longer horizon rate creates approximately $105,000, $140,000, and $175,000. Those are substantial amounts, especially after Social Security begins. You can travel frequently, choose more convenient accommodations, pay for help at home, make larger gifts, and tolerate expensive years without dismantling the plan. A family wedding, major renovation, or long trip becomes a scheduling decision rather than a financial crisis. But compare an ordinary weekday at $3 million with one at $2 million. You wake up in the same bed, you drink the coffee you already prefer, you talk to the same spouse, walk the same dog, call the same friend, and complain about the same knee. More wealth changes the edges of the day far more than its center. At this tier, large and infrequent choices become easier. You can fund part of a grandchild's education, help an adult child with a home, donate appreciated investments, or carry a second property. Those decisions can be deeply meaningful. They're not an upgrade to every waking hour. They're occasional deployments of capacity. Your planning problems also become less about adequacy and more about efficiency. Large pre-tax balances can create substantial required distributions later. Under current law, required minimum distributions generally begin at age 73, with the applicable age moving to 75 for later cohorts. Roth conversions, charitable distributions, account location, and withdrawal sequencing can now affect how much wealth remains in the family rather than whether you can afford dinner. The brain problem changes again. Below $1 million, you fear running out. Around $2 million, you fear retiring too soon. Above $3 million, you may fear using the money incorrectly. Spending on yourself feels indulgent. Giving too much feels irresponsible. Leaving too much feels wasteful. You solved the income problem and unlocked a philosophy problem. This is where mainstream retirement advice becomes irritating. The traditional 4% rule began as a historical test of whether a fixed, inflation-adjusted withdrawal could survive difficult 30-year periods. It was not designed to tell you what a good life costs, whether your spending should remain flat, when you should claim Social Security, or how much flexibility you actually have. A stress test became a lifestyle prescription because 1% is easier to sell than a working system. The standard calculator multiplies your balance by 4% and displays a paycheck. It may ignore that your travel spending will be higher at 65 than at 85. It may ignore which account is taxable, how you respond after a crash, and whether your supposed retirement budget includes health coverage, home repairs, or helping family. Then, it congratulates you on reaching the number. The software has completed its emotional duties. Knowing these numbers and building a system around them are two very different things. That gap is why I built a digital book called The Exit Code. It takes 50 years of actual retirement data and distills it into a mathematical framework for exiting the rat race without relying on one magic percentage. It explains the 4% trap and the dynamic withdrawal method that replaces rigid annual spending with rules for strong and weak markets. It also examines the unretirement paradox, including why people can reach financial independence and still discover that leaving work did not solve the problem they thought it would. There are 8 chapters of research with no filler because retirement is already expensive enough without buying motivational wallpaper. You can get it for less than a dinner out through the link in the description. Every year you delay is another year when time keeps compounding in the wrong direction. The important word there is dynamic. A fixed withdrawal treats a booming market and a severe decline as if they deserve identical behavior. A dynamic plan sets a minimum floor, a normal spending target, and rules for bonuses or reductions. It gives you permission to spend more when the portfolio can support it, and tells you what to adjust before fear takes control. That system matters at every wealth level, but it changes purpose as you move upward. At $500,000, the rules prevent ruin. At $1 million, they reduce anxiety. At $2 million, they unlock spending. At $4 million, they prevent excessive caution from turning you into the unpaid security guard of your own portfolio. Now consider $5 million and above, where money largely stops being a daily variable. At $5 million, the conservative 30-year starting income is $195,000 before Social Security, pensions, or other income. A 20% market decline removes $1 million on paper and still leaves $4 million. That is emotionally unpleasant. But for a reasonable spending plan, it is not a lifestyle emergency. You can pay for premium travel, significant family support, charitable projects, professional care, and major home modifications. You can relocate without selling first, replace vehicles with cash, or fund expensive experiences while your health allows them. Wealth now buys the ability to solve many logistical problems quickly. What it cannot buy is enthusiasm. It cannot create close friendships, repair your adult children, make your spouse enjoy travel, give you a reason to get out of bed, or negotiate with your lower back. Once financial friction becomes small, the unresolved parts of life become easier to see. Some people at $5 million continue living as if they have $1 million. That may reflect genuine preference. Frugality can be enjoyable, and expensive consumption is not a moral achievement. The warning sign is when the behavior is driven by fear rather than choice. If you want the trip, can fund the trip, have the health for the trip, and still refuse because the balance might fall, your portfolio is no longer protecting you. You are protecting it. The habits that created the wealth can become hostile to the purpose of the wealth. Delayed gratification works beautifully during accumulation. Applied forever, it becomes delayed living. Discipline built the machine. But discipline does not automatically know when the machine has finished its original job. I have spent more than 10 years running my own business, surrounded by accountants and fiscal lawyers who taught me how money actually moves. I also have multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars invested, so market declines are not an intellectual weather report to me. The conclusion I keep returning to is that most expensive financial mistakes are not calculation errors. They are brain errors wearing mathematical costumes. The useful way to identify your enough point is to divide retirement into 3 layers. Your floor is the spending required to protect housing, food, health, utilities, transportation, and basic dignity. Your cushion covers predictable, irregular costs, such as vehicles, repairs, family support, and bad market years. Your dream layer pays for the activities that make freedom worth having. $500,000 may cover the floor when Social Security arrives. $1 million can add a meaningful cushion. Somewhere around $1.5 million to $2.5 million, many households can fund all 3 layers. Beyond that, additional wealth usually expands the size, frequency, and generosity of the dream layer, rather than inventing a new category of human experience. That range is not universal. A renter in Manhattan, a couple retiring at 45, a family supporting disabled relatives, and a mortgage-free household in a low-cost town do not share one number. The sweet spot is not a balance stamped by the government. It is the first point where your essential life, reasonable shocks, and meaningful desires are all covered without requiring optimistic markets. Once that happens, the next dollar still has value. It has less transformational power. Another $500,000 may improve your margin, but it probably will not produce the emotional revolution your brain advertises while you are earning it. This is why the goalpost keeps moving. Your brain adapts to the new balance and reclassifies it as normal. $1 million felt enormous from $600,000. At 1 million, it becomes the minimum acceptable base. 2 million feels like complete safety until a calculator shows a rare failure scenario. Then 3 million becomes the antidote. The calculator can always manufacture a future in which more would have helped. If your standard is eliminating every imaginable risk, your retirement number is infinity. You can always invent a longer life, a worse crash, more inflation, a costly illness, or a family member who needs help. Responsible planning includes bad scenarios. Anxiety uses them as hostages. The question is not whether more money could be useful. More money is almost always useful. The question is whether its incremental usefulness is worth the time, stress, health, and relationships required to obtain it. At lower levels, another year of work can rescue the plan. At higher levels, it may polish a plan that was already finished. Now, we need to deal with the number that gets repeated around early retirement communities, 81%. A November 2025 essay claimed that one writer tracked 380 early retirees from the financial independence world and found that 81% returned to some form of work within 4 years. I need to be annoying about the source because that is the job. This was an informal account, not a peer-reviewed national study or a representative survey. You should not conclude that 81% of all early retirees fail. The internet loves a precise number, even when the methodology is wearing flip-flops. The stronger American evidence produces much lower figures. A Bureau of Labor Statistics paper using the longitudinal health and retirement study found that approximately 15% of older Americans with career jobs returned to the labor force after initially exiting. Another health and retirement study analysis estimated that 26% reversed a retirement decision, but 82% of those who later returned had expected to work during retirement beforehand. Unretirement was often a planned transition, not evidence that the portfolio exploded. That is the real unretirement paradox. People spend years building enough money to escape work, then discover that work was providing more than money. It supplied structure, identity, status, social contact, deadlines, challenge, and proof that someone needed them on Tuesday morning. When those needs disappear overnight, leisure can become shapeless. The first months feel like a vacation because your nervous system is recovering. Then every day begins to resemble Saturday, and Saturday loses its meaning because it no longer contrasts with anything. Returning to work does not necessarily mean retirement failed. It may mean the original definition was too crude. Financial independence is not a permanent ban on economically useful activity. It is the ability to choose the work, hours, people, and conditions without your mortgage making the decision for you. The better retirement goal is not to stop working at all costs. It is to stop being trapped. You might consult 2 days a week, teach, build a small business, volunteer, mentor, create, or accept a lower paid role that is interesting. The income becomes optional, which completely changes the emotional texture of the work. At $500,000, part-time income may be part of the financial engine. At $2 million, it can provide identity while allowing the portfolio to grow. At $5 million, it may be the cleanest way to keep challenge and community without pretending another promotion will improve your life. Money buys the right to redesign work before it buys the wisdom to know what should replace it. That second problem cannot be solved by another deposit. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. But the fortune only matters when it gives you authority over your time. And authority requires deciding what your time is for. Your retirement number is not the largest balance you can survive working long enough to reach. It is the smallest balance that reliably funds a life you are ready to begin. If the next wealth level does not change your ordinary day, be careful how many extraordinary, healthy days you exchange to obtain it. Next wealth level does not change your ordinary day. Be careful how many extraordinary, healthy days you exchange to obtain it.